Yeah, so we can hear?
Yep.
Okay.
So, now we have a presentation about interacting two different W3C standards, XPrague and XSLT, if I'm XPrague, no, XForms.
Right, so Mars was just trying to confuse you there, I think, by mentioning XPrague. So yes, hi everybody, we're Debbie and O'Neill from Saxonica, and we're going to be telling you about a project that we've been working on for quite a while. Some of this might be familiar to some of you if you saw us in XML London last year, but hopefully we're covering a slightly different angle, and maybe it doesn't hurt to see similar things a second time anyway. So in this talk, we're going to be presenting a new implementation of XForms that we've created using interactive XSLT and XSLT 3.0 by using Saxon.js. So, surprisingly enough, we're calling it XForms. So it's only a partial XForms implementation so far, but already we're finding it useful and seeing some interesting things. As I said, we've implemented it to run in Saxon.js in the browser. So we're using the Saxon.js technologies, which you've just heard a bit about. So you can do XSLT 3.0, and there's the interactive XSLT defined to be used with Saxon.js for handling user interaction in the browser. And so XForms is basically written in XSLT. But this is more than just another XForms implementation for the browser. Because of the way that it works with interactive XSLT, it allows you to do more with forms in your application by adding application logic from your application XSLT. So hopefully we'll show you some things where you can do more than you can just do with XForms. So why did we start doing this? Our motivation all started from working on a project to improve our in-house tool that produces and manages licenses for Saxon products. So it's a form-based tool. Originally, it was written with XSLT server-side, but also with quite a lot of Java. But we wanted to rewrite that and do far more of the whole tool in XSLT and do the client side using Saxon.js. So do more XSLT processing in the browser already. So we wanted to improve this tool, and we wanted to try using Saxon.js, which is, as developers, that's good for us to go and try our own tools, see what things work. Working. And yes, rather than using existing implementations for XForms for our form-based app, if we have our own implementation that we can better integrate with the application logic, then we can do more in there. So in the rest of this talk, the next 20 minutes or so, hopefully we'll show to you what makes XForms interesting, and we'll have a look inside the implementation and how it actually works, how we're using interactive XSLT to implement XForms. And then also, as I mentioned, the fact that you can do more. We'll give you some examples of that. So for a form-based application, how you can do a bit more. Okay. So let's go and have a look at our license tool application, so you really know what I'm talking about. So, can we see this okay? Yeah. Okay, so this is what the tool now looks like. So we've moved forward, and this is our tool. It's form-based, so we've got the main page where you insert an order. So an order, if you buy a Saxon license or product, then we get an email to say that what you've ordered. You paste the contents of that email, so it's just structured text. Paste that in, click a button, and then it takes you to another form where you can see that we've extracted the data from the email and showing it in another form. O'Neill's buying another license yet again. Perhaps he doesn't really want the license to start straight away. He wants it in a couple of weeks' time, so we can change that in the form. Maybe he didn't really want some more EE licenses. He wanted a PE instead, so we can change that in the form. Do what you'd expect, add some more, take some more away, but hopefully you could see that it changed the other data in the form at the same time. And then, so this is all working in the browser, and you'd submit the order eventually and actually send that. Do you really want another license?
Go ahead, try.
Let's send another license. Oh, he doesn't really get one. It's gone to me because this is a test. I'm not really giving away more free licenses. Okay. But, so you've seen the tool. You've seen that it's all in forms. Let's go back to the presentation. So yeah, it's a tool for generating and managing our licenses. It's form-based. We're quite pleased that we've managed to move so much of the processing into XSLT, reducing our use of Java extensions. There's still some going on server-side to actually send the emails and store the things. And we're using Saxon forms heavily, but with some more enrichment from our application logic. And we're now really doing XML end-to-end. Taking a step back again, so as a reminder, which you saw earlier from Peter, but so Saxon.js is an XSLT 3.0 runtime to run in the browser. It's written in pure JavaScript, so it runs in a browser's JavaScript engine. And what it's running is a compiled form of your XSLT style sheet that you've generated already using Saxon EE. Okay, and within those style sheets, you can use interactive XSLT in order to create this user interaction-rich application and handle the changes on your page. So interactive XSLT includes extension instructions and functions and modes in order to be able to handle user interaction. So we've got event handling templates, which Peter showed you with the different modes for on-click or on-change events. It's all handled within a template. And then you can dynamically change the content of your HTML page using XSL result document to insert things in your page. So you're doing that. Okay, so hopefully that's enough background that now we can dive into how we've really done it.
You've done well. Thank you, Debbie. So let's just talk about the implementation details of our XForms tool. But before we sort of dive into that, just a little bit of background about XForms. Just you know, for those who might not know much about XForms, going back a little bit. Forms is common in most interactive web technologies, going way back, using HTML as HTML forms is people might be familiar with. But the problem with HTML forms is there's a mixture between the presentation and the content of the form, which is cumbersome and chaotic at best. So XForms is designed to overcome that issue, to create that separation between the content and the presentation. And it does much more as well. So what do we have in XForms? We have the XForms model, And within that, there is the instance which you use that to represent your data. And also, you can sort of add constraints or bindings upon the data for the individual values. And then you have the other part we can call the section to represent the form controls. And in that, the processor for the XForms will render the page on any device, maybe a HTML page or a mobile phone, the form. But the benefit of XForms, you don't have to worry about the presentation. You just have to create your XForm document and leave that to the processor. Another benefit is the validation you can do within the form. Going back again to HTML, it saves that round trip of going to the server to validate your form and coming back with some result on the validation. And also, what's important to us is and what we can do well in Saxon.js is the handling of events, which we call the interactive part. So, Saxon forms. There's two stages in the actual processing of the actual the XForm document. You have the initialization. So you will give your XForm document to the main template, and it goes away and initializes it and adds the forms to the HTML page. There's also the setup of the event handling. So in the initialization, use XSLT to transform each section of the form control into equivalent, or we call it sort of enriched HTML form elements. Behind the scene, what's happening is we're using the JavaScript area global variables to add cache some properties to do with the form, and that helps us with the event handling later on. So let's look at the actual HTML page structure. So within the head, when you load a form, we insert this script element, and the content that's inserted here. And this is important because just in XSLT, we have to keep some. It's going to be difficult to keep sort of mutable data, and there are some things we have to keep between the various template rules. So, for example, here, the instance document is going to be mutable data, and is updated between the handling of events. In fact, the forms document itself is stored as a global variable, and this is a DOM object of the forms document. There are various maps as well that we keep. For example, the actions we keep as a key value pair, where the value itself is a JavaScript object representing the set of actions to do with any form control. And we use get and set functions to set these variables. Like in the add action here, we provide the name and the value. And this is a JSON map, and the value itself is the object. And just to show you, in the body, we have an HTML input, which it's been enriched with some additional attributes, which is important to the event handling. So we have constraints upon this particular input. Now, from the demo, it's difficult to take in all this information, but the maintenance days of the Saxon tool, of the actual license to, is you can have some constraints, and also an action here, which is a generated code, which is used as the key inside the map. We also have the type of the information, the value, and also the data reference, which points to that particular element in the instance document. Right, so the updating of the actions, or how we sort of add the action into the action map. This is just this code snippet. So for this particular form control, maintenance days, this is a XForm value change type of event. And given that you change, this is a set value action, and there's certain conditions here on running this actual set value. And when you change something in the form, it's going to run this particular action here to update another element in the instance document. So this map is added. We use the JavaScript function. So this is directly within XSLT to add this action map in the key value map. So some information on the event handling. This is just a kind of a sort of a pipeline of the things that goes on here, or sort of the processing. So given we have a template rule, and I appreciate in the previous talk, this is to do with an on-change event for this particular input element. And we match on, this is for a form control that has an action associated with it. The first thing we do, we need to update the instance. There may have been changes in the form, so we have to keep the instance updated before we do anything else. Then we get a set of actions associated with this input box. There may be two things that can happen here. The action could be associated to another form control on the page, so then we directly update that value. Or it could be something which is not on the page, but associated to something in the instance, and we sort of keep that for updating later on. So let's just look some more at the XSLT to do all of this, just highlighting key parts to it. We need to know what element has been changed. We use a JavaScript function to get the set of actions. This is telling us, not going into the details, but we use some apply templates to update the instance, just to make sure it's consistent. Whoops, I've gone on too quick. There we go. So then we go through all the actions associated with this input. And just to highlight to you here, we use XSL evaluate with the context of the updated instance to get the particular part of the instance that's relevant to this action. And then we execute the action on that fragment of the instance. And there's some other things we have to do as well for this input box. There might be some relevant parts to this box, whether it should appear or not, because we change a value. We need to check all those little things as well. Right. So Debbie mentioned about what makes our XForms implementation interesting? Well, we're able to integrate the XForm into an application and also do some interesting application logic, which is made possible through XSLT. So one of the things which you saw in the demo is where we take the email structured string, paste that into the text area, and what happens at that stage is we have to use XSLT to parse that input and build the instance which is then supplied to the XForms. We also override the submission. That's very important. The XForms submission implementation is not yet, I would say, complete, but we've done, because we just thought, well, let's just implement it according to what we use in a license tool application. So we've overridden that to do some specific application logic, particular to our business. What I didn't mention is that the XForm function library, there's user-defined functions that you can add within the XSLT, and then you can call it directly in the XPath in the XForms. So just to show what happens here, so we get the email text, paste that in, as was shown in the demo, and the XSLT will create the instance, which is then used in the edit form. Right, I'm going to hand back to Debbie to talk about the submission, because she's the one that created this bit.
Do you know which of this is? Which one's mine?
I have no idea.
You know what I mean? Okay, anybody else know? Never mind. Okay, yes. So as O'Neill said, we override the submission in our application logic. And this is kind of out of choice because we want to be able to handle the response within the application itself. So in order to do this, we had to implement an HTTP client in Saxon.js and introduce some mechanisms in the interactive XSLT for you to call it and use it. So now we're going to show that. So this is all in a event handling template. For a click on the submit button, and we go and pick up the current instance somehow with the ... and we're going to build up a body for our HTTP request containing that instance. We then set up a map that defines the rest of the HTTP request itself. So put the body in, say we're going to post where it's going to and the media type. And then we use a schedule action call with this HTTP request attribute supplying your map that you've just built to make an asynchronous HTTP request. And on the response, you'll go back to the call template in the sequence constructor. So on the response, when the HTTP response comes back, whatever we've told it to send from the server side, it'll go to this HTTP submit template and handle our response. And that means that we can, just send back fragments of XML and just handle those directly, and basically it's put them in the pop-ups and things like this. Okay. Where am I? Okay, so 2 minutes left. We're on to our conclusion. I think we're all right. So hopefully that made some sense, and we've said what we wanted to say. So for our side, we're happy with what we've built and created. So we've improved our license tool. We're happy that we're doing far more of it in the browser, and we're using XSLT. We've got rid of that nasty Java. And we've proven, again, that Saxon.js we can do interesting things with Saxon.js. Why was this interesting to you? Well, you can use XForms and Saxon.js as well. Hopefully next time you're doing a form-based app, maybe you'll go, maybe we can use Saxon.js for that. So as we said, it's more than just another implementation. You can add your own application logic to do other things that you can't currently do, or you couldn't currently do with XForms. And so hopefully this is all good things, you can do more. So yes, XForms is available on GitHub. I think we need to update it, and our current version is also running on an unreleased version of Saxon.js, but that will get released soon, hopefully. Having told you that, I better do it. And yes, so look to the future. Are we going to do a full implementation? Well, I think it depends on user feedback and whether other people want to get involved as well. We've got other work to be getting on with as well, but we're keen for this to go further. We haven't just done it, put all this work in just for ourselves. We want other people to use it, and there's definitely promise of going further and taking it to a full implementation. Why not? But yeah, depends on help from you. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. We have one or two. Oh, time for a question. Okay.
Of course.
What a surprise.
Actually, it's not an XForms question. I don't understand why you get that weird email in the beginning.
Yes, because because the world is not all run on XML, I think, is the answer. Sadly, the shop website only gives us the option of sending back text.
You use somebody else's technology for people to buy, and then that just sends you an email with weird text.
Who are they called? Equid, yeah. So our shop's run with Equid, and they only let us send back that. So, of course, in an ideal world, they would send us XML straight away, but they don't.
Yeah.
I guess so. So we should rewrite Equid.
I have a question.
Yes?
How easy is it to internationalize or localize your forms? What if I wanted it in a different language?
Oh, wait for my talk. I'll show you how to do it.
Wait for my talk, I'll show you how I couldn't do it.
I'm sure between us we can do it, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well done.
Another question. I think I saw one on Twitter. Alain asked if you could show some bit of the XForm to the audience, but maybe you have to copy paste it on Twitter or something.
So is this actually...
Wouldn't it be nice to have a look at the XForm source page? That was Alain's question. Right. Okay.
So
because you showed a lot of XSLT and it was good, but we didn't see XForms.
Okay. I think maybe we hoped that was familiar.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.